Here we go. Best day of the week.
Yes, for sure.
This is How to CPCU. I am Matt. This is Heather. As usual, like, comment, subscribe, share, notification bell, retweet. Get this out here. We got a fun one because we're going to be talking about some personal life experiences on this one, especially within the CPCU Society. But as usual, help us broadcast this message and get it out to insurance folks and insurance professionals that can, get and use this information, and maybe they want to become part of the Leadership Council, which is what we're talking about interviewing for this week. Maybe they want to be a part of the Leadership Council in the future. So definitely share this out there and help us also, get upvoted and getting the algorithm working in our favor. So that being said, I kind of let the cat out of the bag, but we are talking about Leadership Council interviews. And the one thing I would also remind everyone is we take live comments and questions. So if you have some battle stories from the front lines of the Leadership Council interview process, we would love to hear those as well, and share those as we go through this. But so we were just talking before we hit the live button that we kind of had different experiences here in terms of our interview process. So how about you give everyone just like the abridged version, when, where, how, like what was your experience like, Heather?
Yeah, I interviewed for Leadership Council. I believe was it in Baltimore, I think, at the Leadership Summit. And, so it was an in-person experience. And of course, the moments leading up to it, you're like, it's the same nerves you get when you're interviewing for a job somewhere or anything like that. But come into this gigantic conference room in a hotel with the massive boardroom table, and they sit you down at the end of the table in front of the firing squad, basically, and proceed to introduce themselves, and then kind of barrage you with tons of questions about things. But experience overall, like I said, very positive takeaways from it. Just the intimidation factor was there, but 3 minutes into it, it was gone. They really made me feel at ease in the conversation, and they treated it more as a conversation versus we really want to, I'm reading my question off my piece of paper, and boom, you answer it. So it was, like I said, overall great experience. Learned a lot from it. Didn't make Leadership Council at that point, which is okay. It's perfectly fine. But that's just a little peek into my experience there, Matt. What was yours like?
We have had very different experiences because, and COVID has definitely made this. I interviewed just last week, and so actually 2 weeks ago. Sorry, COVID brain. COVID made this a different experience for me. So obviously it wasn't in person. It was completely remote. So we were in a Zoom meeting. There was the, murderer's row of who's who in the society on the screen. What was interesting was like some people would come and go. So like, someone's account would like pop off of the meeting and then come back in. So there was that going on. What did help me was like this, right? Like I've got some practice at this, so I could only imagine how awkward or weird it would be if you didn't have this kind of experience and you're sitting there interviewing for a position where you have to be, personable and you're kind of like selling your merits to like what you can bring to the table for the society. And so, yeah, it was a little bit awkward. No real feedback afterward. They're going to like go through the round of interviews before they give feedback as part of the process now. But yeah, it was. How should I put it? It was really interesting because I've never had to remotely interview for a job before. I've done a couple of like phone interviews. And the difference between the phone interview and the Zoom was you can see people's faces, right? So like in a phone interview, it's like you were talking about, like question, and then like verbal diarrhea, and then wait for the person to respond on the other end, right? And
Yeah.
then, if the person just moves on to the next question, you're like, okay, well, maybe I did well, maybe I didn't, I have no idea. Sometimes you get a little laugh in the middle of it. Were you extremely like formal about your presentation? Was it very much about like, were you all business, or did you try and like inject some humor into it?
When I first walked in, and I've interviewed multiple times and inside of the carrier that I work for, and so I was adjusted to the type and style of interviewing that I've been through. Behavioral based interview questions, situation action task result, situation task action result answers, and really tried to focus in on that, and then tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, you have that elevator speech prepared.
Yeah.
But, I kind of stepped back from myself at a moment, and I was like, I'm not sitting in a company interview right now. I recognized that pretty quick
Yeah.
into the interview. And I was like, this is a moment for them to see me and not the facade that I think that I should have to put up to be able to tell the story of who I am and my merits and everything for the role. Now my interview differed very much, Matt, in that afterwards, I mean, like immediately afterwards, first of all, when I walked out after the interview, I don't know if you know Jim Jones or not, but he's the director of the Katie School of Insurance. He came out immediately, and because I was talking about how I was working on my master's degree in instructional design, and and of course that immediately connected with him, and he was like, "We've got to talk. We've got this opportunity that I think." So, like, out of that interview, opportunities came for me.
Oh,
And
that's
he was
awesome.
like, we need to connect. We've got to find a way to be able to connect. So it was almost like, and then he was like, fantastic job, by the way. Really love this. I'm just going to tell you, you're probably not going to get the role. And I was like, oh, okay. So why?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's all over now. So, I'd like to know the why behind that.
Yep.
And he stepped aside and he said, it's because you haven't had enough leadership experience in the society. That's the reality of it. And the other reality is like, when they look for leadership council members, they're looking for someone who eventually might have the capability or that be at that moment in their career where they could step into like CPCU society president role, like Sharon's role at some point. And they're like, you're not quite there with your career yet. And so that's okay. Get out there and get the experience, and go for it. And I was told the exact same thing by another leadership council member. Probably it was after the next interview. Like, he came out after the next interview and he kind of hunted me down somewhere at the leadership summit. He was like, we really need to talk, and spent like 25 or 30 minutes with me just explaining the merits of what I presented, and how I have all these wacky and crazy ideas of things they can do with the CPCU society. And he said, we need people like you, but just give it a little bit of time. Get your experience, get into some more leadership roles, run a chapter somewhere, do something, come back. And so I was like, now I have a path. I've got homework to do. And I hopped on that trail and started doing that right after it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome that you walked in the interview, you didn't get the position, but you got something that turned into a paying job. Like, that's awesome.
What's that paying? It's more like passion work, like get to help out and do some passion work. And of course, the other connection with that is that, Jem is the one that connected me with my adjunct professorship that I now have at Illinois Wesleyan as well. So he was like, he's always there to present those opportunities, but it's because we made that connection at that moment. And that's what I think kind of the magic of that in-person experience probably brings. It's different now. I've actually interviewed for jobs, inside my company behind the camera, and it is so it is so crazy and weird because you're like, am I making enough eye contact with this camera right now? Do it. I can't look at the people on the screen. I got to look at the camera and try to place my eyes. You're so focused on all those technical issues that
Yeah.
you forget to almost back away from that and just be yourself. So
Yeah.
I would say pressure was different. The pressure was different in the room because anytime that you're in an in-person experience like that, it's very different.
Yep.
But, now it's like, either way, it wouldn't bother me to interview because I'm just going to go in there. I'm just going to say, here I am. This is who I am. Take it or leave
yeah.
it,
And what's interesting is in in classic, COVID Zoom world, body language and like how you appear and everything like that is really important in person. And it's important on Zoom too, but it's different. It's not the same thing, right? And so to Tony's question, I'm assuming he's asking me. No, I did not shave. I was better trimmed at the time, so don't worry. I'm scraggly today, but I did a better job of combing and doing the beard balm. Yes, yeah. So I was a little bit more kempt. But that being said, I specifically had a conversation with myself, and I'm like, am I going to wear a suit? Am I going to I mean, people have seen me in the past with, shaved, slick hair, suit, right? Classic broker stylings, right? And I was like, you know what? If I'm going into this thing, I'm going into this thing speaking my truth, so to speak. Like, I'm going to tell people who I intend to be on the Leadership Council. And my goal is not to be the cookie cutter, slick talking broker. Like, that's not what I perceive as, or that's not the way I want to be perceived and I want to execute on the role. So I wore a nice, button up shirt or whatever, but I wasn't over the top or anything. And then my goal was on the Zoom call to get some people to laugh. That was my goal. Right. So that's why I asked you about whether you were kind of formal about it. I was like, you know what? This is a really awkward setting. Just people staring at screens and one person talking about themselves on the screen, trying to vie for a position. I was like, I need to crack some jokes. And I was like, you know what? Even if they die, at least I tried, at least the people, I wanted to give them the feeling that they got their money's worth, right? Especially if I don't get the spot, at least they enjoyed the half hour or whatever that we were talking, right? But so, to Mary's point, Mary Comer asking, what types of questions did they ask you? Do any stick out in your mind, Heather, as far as particular questions?
Yeah, I think one of the questions that stuck out to me was, what is your vision for what the society should look like in the next it was maybe the next 5 years. And then there was questions about membership, increasing membership and how you would plan to do that. And how you would try to lead the society to do that as well. Leadership style questions, what's your leadership style, and what's your experience in leadership style roles and everything. So, pretty standard stuff. But one thing that was really cool in my interview, Troy Baldwin was in there, by the way, and he was he goes, well, I know you're that person that's super active on social media for the CPCU Society, right? And so he threw me the softball, and I was like, boom, here's out of the park. Here's my crazy idea. And I was talking about social streaming channels and all these things that I think that could advance the society. And here we are today, Matt. We're doing that cool stuff.
Yeah.
But it is, I would say, nothing super over the top or intimidating, but I'm scratching the filing cabinet here to try to remember any of the other questions. But you've interviewed super recently, so you probably have pretty good recollection of everything that they asked you about.
The one that was interesting, and it really kind of draws a good not a comparison, a good a contrast from interviewing for a particular job, right? This would actually be a really good question for any job interview. But the question, and I forget who asked it to me, was how do you view the role of someone on the leadership council, right? And it's a great question because there's multiple levels to it. It's like, have you done your homework and actually figured out what the leadership council does, right? Where do you think you'll fit in? Is the person just giving, like, if I'm the interviewer and I ask that question, is the person just giving me some answer to say, like, I'll be a good little Boy Scout or Girl Scout and fill the position and, that kind of thing. So I do have a very, I have a bag of tricks that I dip into every time. I've never had a problem having a job. And it's part of the reason why I'm also good at sales, is because you find the things that kind of resonate with people, and you might have to tweak them a little bit over time or for the particular situation. But, there are these like common things that you can say, do, and that kind of thing that they sway people or they get them to buy or something, right? So I've used this one since I was 16 years old, and to like just totally divulge myself as a gigantic nerd. I was the president of the marching band. Okay, like I was the king band nerd, right? And so you have to give a speech when you're in front of the people and trying to get their vote, right? It's a very democratic process.
Yeah.
And so I basically told them, I said, look, I'm going to be a leader in this organization regardless if I have this title or not. So whether you want me to have the title or not, like, have no fear. Like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to continue to kick butt and take names and do what I need to do in order to like make us good, right? But it's like, it's that saying that, and then you followed up with saying, but I would really like, that official title to say that I am here in an official capacity to help the organization. So there's that kind of like, the defiant streak that's like, to hell with your position. Like, I'll do it. I'll be good anyway, right? But then there's also the like sincerity at the end. That's like, but I would really like the opportunity, to officially be doing it in that capacity, that kind of thing. But it is a really, like, if someone asked you that question, what do you view the role of a leadership council member to be? Like, what would your first instinct be to say that's what their role is?
Yeah, I think the tough thing is that it seems like it's mysterious when it really isn't. But I can tell you, they asked me that question too. Now you're making me recollect, because I was looking up here. I've got this poster on my wall that I've always used in interviews as well, and maybe it probably comes across as, in some ways, a little tough as an answer. But what I said was that, how do I see myself in the role? I said, I'm going to push the status quo. I'm going to challenge the norm, because I feel like to grow as an organization, the CPCU Society has room for growth potential. I said, I'm going to challenge the people around me to think with a growth mindset. I'm going to challenge the members of the CPCU Society to exercise their emotional intelligence and push that status quo, because that's what's going to advance us as an organization. That's what's going to keep us engaged. That's what's going to get the next generation engaged as well. And I threw in the leader without the title stuff because, in truth, like, I've never held a management role anywhere. I guess I could say management, yes. I ran a business for a while. I actually ran a preschool before I started insurance. So that's a leadership style role. And I had employees and everything as well. And I did the whole aspects of that. But in insurance, I've never had those leadership roles, but I've always been known as someone who led, no matter whatever chair I was sitting in. And that, to me, is like the whole concept of transformational leadership and leading without that title. Because the leadership council isn't there to be authoritarian and, push down the directives from the high chair all the time. They're there to help to guide and mold others to do that within the society. It's a volunteer organization. So how do you, you can't get people to do things unless you allow them to lead in that. So, and that, I think that to me is so crucial for people to understand about the Leadership Council. Yes, it is a leading role in the society, but they're not there to lead from above. They're there to lead from, we're going to push everybody else up and push
Oh
the
yeah.
society forward. So.
Yeah. And one thing that I hit on that I wish I went a little bit deeper into is the idea of servant leadership, right? Like the idea that you know, what gets done is not necessarily because of people who are on the leadership council or even on the executive committee. It gets done because of, the society employees. It gets done because of specifically, especially the society members throughout the entire organization. And so that was also something that like I brought up, and I was really like, I would view my role as a catalyst, right? The ability to kind of like be this go-between, so that my job is to network and know people and be able to connect people just like my day job is, so that when the LC does or the EC wants to go in a certain direction, I can say, okay, this is what I can add, this is what I can help with, I know these people, I know this resource, I can make this phone call. Like that's what I see as that real position. All the while understanding that, again, this is one of my, if anyone's watching and you have an interview soon, like take notes. This is another one of my little things is like, I always tell them, whatever the job role is that it says on paper, know that that's my starting point. Like that's not what I'm looking to do ultimately. That's what I'm looking to master as quickly as possible, so that then I can do a little bit more, right? Like my job is to advance the ball, like make things better. And that's not to say to be critical of people that are just like, you know what, if that's the job, that's what I'm going to do. That's fine, right? But if you want someone who's going to look at it and say, all right, my job is to master that as quickly as possible, and then to give you that little bit extra, right? Like, our last annual meeting we saw each other personally at was New Orleans, right? New Orleans, I went to school there. They have a saying, it's called lagniappe. You give everyone a little lagniappe. It's a little something extra, right? It's like that little extra overpour of their coffee, or that little extra piece of candy when they walk out the door, to make them feel like they're not getting just what they expected, but even more so, right? And so that was really my perspective. I was like, look, I just want to be a catalyst. Like, let's tighten up the messaging. Let's be like big time advocates and cheerleaders for this organization. And then you just let me know what has to be done, and I will tell you what resources are at my disposal in order to be able to accomplish it. But yeah, it was super weird though, because people were like in and out, and so like someone would ask you a question and then they would kind of like leave the room and then come back, like I guess they were balancing work and life at the same time, so all of that stuff is going on. Yeah, it was tough because it was hard to get a read on the room. Did you see like when you were there in person and you were kind of like delivering some of the answers to these questions, were they reacting to you? Or were they all poker face, just straight like,
Oh no. I mean, like that's also the beauty of being in a room with people as well, because you can read that room. You can tell like who's really paying attention, and honestly, everybody was paying attention. They wanted to hear what you had to say. No one was like,
Can I give you a little
snoring,
anecdote? Can I give you a
snoring.
little anecdote? So a little anecdote from my professional life
Yeah.
is when you're vying for a public contract, a lot of times there will be an interview process. So they do like a cow call for everyone to respond for the bid, right?
Yeah.
And then the top 2 or 3 or whatever, they'll do an interview, and you're typically sitting in a room with mostly elected public officials, and then maybe 1 or 2 like appointed people. And the appointed people, like that's their job. They're like the business administrator or the CFO of the organization. But the elected officials obviously are elected officials, so their job is politics. And so what's funny is you'll go into a room and like be interviewing for a job, and you like someone legitimately will be someone who's a decision maker and scrolling their phone the whole time. just sitting there, just scrolling their phone the entire time. And you're like, okay, I know what political side that person's on. Like, because it's always that, right? It's always like, team this or team that, to your point, most of the people, when I could look down from the camera, were actively engaged and interested in that kind of thing. But no, that's always one of those things where it's like, it's like the people who have the story about the nightmare where they're like, reading something in front of the classroom and they're like, in their underwear or whatever. Like, that's exactly, I'm always wondering if it's that situation where it's just like, people are like zoned out or like not even paying attention, but no, people were fairly engaged in the process. What was also tough was how many people interviewed you. I think I had like, at the max, I think I had like 8 or 9 people who were on the other end of it.
I would say there was at least 8 to 10 people in the room,
Okay.
So I mean,
Yeah.
like that, it was one of those big long conference room tables, and they
Yep.
plopped me down at the end. And when you walk into those types of interviews, obviously you're dressed to the nines, you're all business and everything. And when I think back on that now, I was like, that may not really be me. Because yes, I have business suits and I've got the power suits and I've got that, I can put on that look. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of like a hippie. And I'm kind of like, I wear flowery dresses and I do, and I wear my hair up and wear bandanas all the time. And I do
if
that. And
if
I
I
was like,
remember correctly, this was also pre the insurance rebel alter
yeah, that
ego,
was a
wasn't
little
it?
pre-insurance rebel time too. So it was like, you know what? I think the leadership council interview kind of unleashed that side of me that it said, you know what? It is okay to be like that in insurance.
I like
It
that.
really is.
Yeah.
You can open and show who you really are versus, yes, I'm very businesslike. I am here, I'm here with my perfect power suit and my earrings and my hair done up and everything. And it's just, to me, it was like I needed to stop giving lip service to that, really,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that now, granted, I at that time working in an office setting and everything, but I was like, I'm gonna relax a little bit more. I'm gonna wear that flowery shirt,
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
gonna do that. And to my surprise, no one really had an issue with me doing that. It was me that was holding myself back from that at the same
Totally.
time. So,
Yeah.
and another little nugget of information that I did get from the feedback that I got from them was that they really look for people who are going to bring a different kind of spark to the leadership council as well. And they're like, you have got that. You just need this one other little things to come alongside you so that you're ready to be able to bring what you've got to
So
the table. So,
this is perfect timing. So Mary Calmer is asking, at what point in your CPCU career do you feel like you'll be ready to reapply?
I have got, let's see, I serve as a treasurer right now for my chapter, and in our succession planning within our chapter, I'll be president next year. And then I serve in the role of immediate past president after that. Where I go from there, I'm looking at probably that 2-year time frame to hop back in and try to do that interview again, just because balancing, the volunteer service that you do with the chapter and then also being part of a leadership council too, that might be taxing. And CPCU is not the only volunteer group and volunteer board that I'm involved in. So I have to think about that type of timing. I've thought about as well, like, do I want to hop in and try to be like an interest group governor, or do I want to try to hop in and try to be the chapter governor role? Because then you're stepping it up. You're at that next level of everything. But I also think I could probably do it in 2 years. I'll have served on all the executive chapter roles. I'll have served, within the claims interest group for multiple years by that point. on the committee and on the board. So it's to me, it's like a couple years and I'll be there for sure.
Yeah, no, I definitely. It's so. I don't know. I feel a little. I was talked to by a couple of people to kind of like get me into the mix, and so again, I don't know what the result is or anything like that. And it's entirely possible that this is like the first go around of 2 or 3, who knows how many times, right? But I definitely get the feeling that, or not the feeling. I was always like wondering to myself. I was like, well, have I spent enough time? Like I've been in a number of those roles and like checked those boxes, but have I really spent enough time in those positions? Because like you said, they're probably also looking for folks that are the minor league team for the executive committee, right? So of all the people on the leadership council, only a handful of them will actually end up being elevated up to the EC. And so, you only have a certain number of shots. You can't just kind of like, you need the best of the best in order to fill those spots so that you get even, higher accolades or people that are moving up to the executive committee, right? And so, yeah, there was a moment of kind of like, I don't know if I would call it personal, I don't know, like introspection or like maybe doubt, like a personal doubt, and I'd be like, well, you know what? I've been in these spots before, but am I there, right? Like, am I there yet? And I've never been someone who like wanted other people to validate me. Like I always wanted to validate myself, which also ends up being, me being my biggest critic. But that was something that kind of crossed my mind, was like, there was some doubt that kind of sunk in towards the end where it was like, you know what, even kind of like talking myself up, have I done enough? Like, have I been around for long enough? That kind of thing, but it is what it is. I mean, like the years of experience, that was the other thing. Like, when you kind of like talked about your experience up until that date, were there certain things that you really kind of keyed in on and then other things that you left out? Or was it your goal to just kind of lay it all out on the line? Like, these are all of the things I've done and this is who I am.
Yeah. I mean, I think my goal was to be just transparent and open. Just tell them what I've done, who I am. I recognize that, I recognized before I walked in the room, hey, I got this little chunk of missing experience. But I wanted to show them that, hey, like, I got the moxie to walk in here as well and tell you my story and tell you why I think I would be a good candidate for this. That's how I walk into any interview, though. Now, I have dropped that curtain, and I'm just like, I'm the person that you want for this, not because of everything that I've done, but because I really want to build other people through what I'm doing too. And that taking that attitude of servant leadership into everything too, that this isn't about me. But you're looking at me right now, so I've got to tell you everything about me so that you can know that I'm here to be able to help everybody else as well. So that's just kind of the style and the attitude that I've tried to take. I can't say it hasn't always worked for me. It's not always been it doesn't always ring true with a lot of people because they look at it as, well, who are you? But with others, it's like, you've got courage, you've got capability, you might be missing like this one skill set or this one thing, but we can train that, we can build that in you. And for me with Leadership Council, it was, you got to get this leadership experience that we look for in the people that have served on these types of boards in the past. And then, be at that moment in your career where you can dedicate the time to this as well. So that was kind of the eye-opening piece of it for me.
Did they ask you about the time commitment? That was one question they specifically asked me about. It was
they definitely
can you dedicate?
They definitely asked me about that. They also asked me about, like, would your company be supportive of you being a part of this? And they asked those, and those were tough questions to answer. I'm like, well, they're supportive of me being here today. They're supportive of me having this opportunity to be able to talk to you. I've shared this. I've been open and transparent with them about what what the commit would be for me to be a part of it. But that there seemed to be some hesitancy on their part. They felt like, well, maybe we don't really know that she's going to be in a position for support. That was, I kind of read that. There wasn't anybody that, outright said it, but I kind of read that in the room. But I would say, all in all, anyone who is interested at all, even if you feel like you're not quite there yet, go through the experience of doing it, because you will learn such an incredible amount. And number two, you're on a radar at that point too. You make connections, and just like with everything else that you do with CPCU Society, you're going to make a network of connections with people that you're going to stay in touch with over time, as you start to build your resume out with all the other boxes that need to be ticked for a particular role. So, but I would, for me, Matt, I would say I'd like to know what kind of jokes did you try to fly in a Zoom room with people? I got people to cut up and laugh and everything, but it was around a story that I told or something.
that was it. I mean, like, you know me, I typically don't go full on dad joke, at least not in that environment. You know, I usually wait until the happy hour afterward to go to that direction. But no, it was they asked me about like recruitment, like how have you been able to get people into the society and things like that. So I talked about my time heading up a team and the fact that I not only advocated for the designation, but I incentivized them with money. And I said, don't exactly give me too much credit, because I plied them with cash, right? Like my direct reports. But I talked about some of the other people that I've helped through, like mentorship and things like that, where it's a give first and ask second. So like you're giving them some help with their career, and they kind of understand that, like on the tail end you're gonna be like, look, the only reason why I know some of this stuff is because of this organization that I'm involved in. So definitely put that into your request for employment and stuff. But yeah, that was a good laugh. Like, don't exactly give me credit for paying off people to be a part of the CPCU Society. Like, that was a good one. I think at one point in time, I also told them that because they were my direct reports, I was able to essentially, tell them to go. Like, and they thought that was funny. But yeah, I tried to kind of like just bake some of that stuff in to the overall like answer to the question, right? But so to the time commitment question, I think that's also interesting from the aspect of it's an organization that's predominantly populated by volunteers, right? So I think you always have to at least be asking that question in the back of your mind, if not actually openly, because there are some folks that, yeah, like they love the idea of being able to dedicate the time and stuff like that, but it's not necessarily time that has an immediate payoff, like an immediate ROI and stuff. So, I got questions from, and luckily enough, there was a nice diverse representation on the Leadership Council of people from different areas of the industry. And so there were a couple of people I know are brokers on the Leadership Council. And so, I would imagine that they were also asking me from that standpoint of like, well, if you have the option to, work developing one more lead or work on the Leadership Council, are you going to be able to balance those two things, And I basically divulged to them that I am a masochist when it comes to working 24 hours a day. So I was like, look, do you care if I get the Leadership Council stuff done at 2 a.m. versus, 3 o'clock in the afternoon? And they were like, no, not really. I was like, well, then I'm your guy. I was like, just don't leave the ringer on your phone because that email might actually hit your inbox at 2 o'clock in the morning. uh, but yeah, it was a good experience. Look, like, win, lose, or draw, it was a really good experience because it also made me rethink kind of my position in the society, right? Like, what am I doing here? Am I doing everything that I can? Am I trying to do too much? Is there something that I could fine tune that would be bigger impact, right? And so, you and I, when we say that we're going to be leaders regardless, there's no doubt in that. Like, we are going to be leaders. And so if it's not being on the leadership council, my next question is going to be like, okay, where can I make the most impact? Is it, working on a committee? Is it, redoubling my efforts in terms of the local chapter? Like, what is that kind of thing? The other thing that I kind of found myself like rechecking and rechecking and rechecking is, all right, I've had a couple of stops along the way in terms of like chapter leadership, currently regional governor. Did I leave the place better than I found it? Right? Like, that's always the other thing I was asking myself, because I continually go back to this study, and I forget who did it. It was probably in the Harvard Business Journal or something like that. But they talked about, successful managers versus effective managers.
Yeah.
And you could be successful in terms of climbing the corporate ladder, but that has absolutely, very little to do with, whether you've actually been accomplishing things at each one of those levels. A lot of it has to do with you networking and, making the right connections and being good at golf or whatever, right? Whereas effective managers are really those people who are the servant leaders. They are the ones that every single step along the way, they actually don't care about the next step. What they care about is succeeding in the step that they're in. And I found myself really asking that question as I was kind of going through this mental process. Like, all right, have I, made sure that I didn't just like hold things up? Like, I wasn't like, keeping the balls up in the air when I was there. And then like I walked around and walked away and they all hit the ground, right? Like, that was the one thing I wanted to make sure that I could actually answer to the affirmative, that I wasn't doing that, but yeah, it was an interesting experience. Anything else stick out to you about the experience, or what it has had a positive effect on you, or maybe even a negative effect? I don't know. Later on, afterward.
Yeah, know that before I answer that, you were like hitting on exactly one of my very favorite John Maxwellisms, and that is that you can be a ladder climber or you can be a ladder builder in your life and in your career. And don't get me wrong, like early on in your career, you're probably working towards climbing a lot, right? Okay. But do your due diligence during that time as well to build the ladder, because if you're not building it, there's not going to be anything behind you. And there's also not going to be any bridge for anybody else to come across behind you too. So, so that kind of struck me, because you were like hitting on exactly what Maxwell was saying there. But I would say, what sticks out to me is that after that, I had more fire and more passion to try to do more, because I knew that here's where you got to fill in that resume. But it wasn't just about filling in the resume. It was about, I got to build myself more. I got to spend some more time in self-reflection with me, to be able to get better and to be able to be in a place where I can leave zero doubt in their mind the next time that I step into the room that I'm the exact person that they need to be on the leadership council. So, so that I think is probably what thing that really stuck out to me. I do know that like afterwards, I went back to my hotel room and I was like, I gotta take this suit off. I gotta like, and because you're sweating and everything as well. But that's just the nature of being in that in-person environment, and the pressure's on you, and the kind of the heat lamps on you for a while, as they're in the Inquisition. But
Yep.
But that was all me doing that to myself. I recognize that too, because literally it was very laid back. It was very conversational. It wasn't a typical standard style interview.
Yep.
And they really wanted to know me because they didn't know me at that time, which that's another thing that stuck out to me too, is that they were they just seemed very human at that moment. When you hear about leadership council, it sounds like, they are the people behind the curtain.
Yeah.
They have this special role and special title. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of prestige and everything that's associated with being part of that. But they were all very laid back and very human, and very receptive and personable. But again, that's also that comfort of that in-person experience. In Zoom, it's just a different type of personable that you can be with people. And you kind of learn to, you kind of you have to work a little harder sometimes to bring that across.
Oh yeah.
Because human beings depend a ton on body language and eye contact and all those other physical factors that are associated whenever you're having communication with others. So you got to get better at that kind of stuff whenever you are sitting in those virtual style interviews, for sure.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. And believe me, I'm looking forward to. I'm kind of envious of your experience from the standpoint of I'm looking forward to, and I have to wait till September for this, but I want to shake everyone's hand, like say thank you, like at least for taking the shot. I mean, I'm one person who filled out an application and you gave me an opportunity, right? So I at least owe them the thanks for the opportunity, right? Like the time and the energy and the focus of being able to kind of sit on that stage, so to speak, and speak with those folks. And to your point, they're not it's not all Xerxes, right? Like it's not like you're not paying homage to the God King. It is
No.
they are normal people, but they are also successful normal people, right? Like they wouldn't be sitting in those seats if they weren't, both in terms of their role and their activity within the society, but also in their professional life. I mean, you're looking around at people that are VPs and heads of divisions and things like that, and in some cases CFOs and presidents of companies, and they are your peers, or hopefully eventually your peers, right? The people that are at the top of certain verticals within the society, and you want to make sure that you're also paying homage to that it's like thank you, like thank you for looking at me as at least someone who is on that level, right? And acknowledging that. And if you think about it, the 4% or so or whatever of the industry that has their CPCU society, I mean, those people are the 0.1% of the 4%. And they've gotten there not because like they knew a guy, right? Like a typical Jerseyism. They busted their butt. Like those people don't get there because they just like wafted through life. Like they got there because they put in the time and the energy and they cared. Like they cared at every step along the way, and that's how they got there. So yeah. Sharon is saying, are you trying to convince us they are normal? They are most definitely normal.
Wow.
Sharon being one of the most normal among them, which is fantastic. But yeah, I mean, like it's this weird kind of like yin and yang kind of thing, I guess, or dichotomy where it's like, yes, they are normal everyday people. They are not untouchables and things like that, but they're also very successful at what they've done and what they've achieved. It's it's just an honor to be sitting in that space with those people, and that's something we try and communicate to people that are looking at potentially becoming part of the society is you get access to those folks. Like you get to talk to them and shake their hand and, watch them give presentations and maybe even if you're really lucky, they can be your mentor, in some way, shape or form. So you get access to pretty amazing people Oh, and yes, most definitely, Sharon, this is very close, near and dear to my heart. Not everyone works for a big company, so we are a representative across the spectrum. Mom and pops, regionals, large, Fortune 500 or even Fortune 100 companies.
Mhm.
They're all there in the room, which is awesome. So, anything else? Anything finally that also kind of sticks out about your experience?
I think the biggest thing for me is that interview made me better at other things in my life and my career. You
Mm,
know, it made me more comfortable with confronting and bringing my ideas in front of people who have that type of title and who have earned that type of prestige in their life. The job that I have right now, like I work with VPs and AVPs and SVPs and OVPs and all the VP with the P at the end of the title. And what it made me realize is those people are still just people too, you
yep.
know? And they're looking to me now because of the type of job that I have to make sure that all their ducks are in a row and that things
Hmm.
are rolling the way that they need to. That interview kind of gave me some of that confidence that you can step in front of anybody and do this.
Oh yeah.
Because and kind of brought down that veil of being able to work with people in those types of roles,
Yep.
because it can be super intimidating. You're like, I'm just this lowly analyst, and I only do this. No, there's a dependency that's there, and they look to you for your advice. They look to you for your experience. They look to you for your ideas, just like the Leadership Council looks to every single volunteer member of the CPCU Society for your advice, for your ideas, for your engagement to be able to make the society what it is.
Yep.
So, that to me was like, that was very eye opening for me. And that was kind of like one of those pivotal moments where you kind of walk out of something and go, I got some juice here that I
Mm.
can use in other places in my life. So,
No, I
yeah.
love that. And that goes right to the heart of that catalyst idea, or like, the inflection point, right? Like
Mhm.
that point where there is dramatic change that happens after it. This is one of those. Whether you get the spot or you don't, there's opportunity into the future for, growth and change, like good change, right? And exploration and things like that. So, and a huge thank you to Sharon. Sharon is an amazing president of the executive committee for the society,
Yeah.
and she's a good egg. Sharon's a good egg. And anyone who says anything negative about Sharon, you got hell to pay from me. I'll tell you that much. But
I'll
she
take you
basically said
down.
yeah. And we appreciate you, Sharon, too. So thank you so much for what you're doing. Um, but yeah, no, anyone who has the opportunity, I would say, look, don't just get your CPCU and then go to take the interview. I would say try and do some stuff first within the society and get your whereabouts. But if you get a couple years in and you've been active as a volunteer, don't shy away from it, right? Like again, like at the very least, it ends up becoming a very positive building block or step to the next level or the next thing, or even like your next stop along the way within the society. So don't shy away from it from that standpoint. But yeah, uh, look, I'm anxious. Like I got to be honest. Like I really want the spot, um, and it's not really like an ego thing or anything like that. I'm ready to like get in there and just like, first of all, I want to like see what happens behind the curtains, and kind of like it's the political broker in me. It's like I want to rub the elbows and kiss the babies and see what's going on. But the other aspect of it is like I really just kind of want to be a positive impact on that level too. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I don't know. I am an open book, and the one thing I was going to applaud you for, Heather, is you've been extremely open about your experience consistently with this, and some people might have viewed the experience that you had as a loss in some ways, where like you didn't get the position, right? So a lot of people wouldn't necessarily share that experience with others, thinking that it was a low point or a negative. It's a huge positive that you're willing to be transparent and share that with others, and help them learn from it, and also be an inspiration because of the way that you've kind of like, taken steps after that.
Oh, for sure. It's to me, it's always like the moments where you fail, technical failure, I guess you
Yep.
could say. But it's only failure if that's your mindset about
Yep.
it, really. It's not truly failure. And if you don't take it's truly failure if you don't take something away from it at all.
Yep.
And if you just count it as I'm going to shove that off the cliff and never ever try that again, and you just get down on yourself about that. If you take that as an opportunity and just pull everything, like suck all the marrow out of that experience that you possibly can, you'll be better off for it in the end. Some of the best moments in my career have been the moments where somebody has said no to me.
Yep.
Because it was like, okay, now I got to know why, and I'm going to get the fire in my belly to figure out what way that I need to go next, or what curve do I need to take around to be able to get to where I want to go. Those are the best moments in your career, not the moment where somebody says, you got the job. That's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. Because it's a new opportunity. It's a place to be. The best moments are always when somebody says, no, you're not, no. But only if the person who's giving that no does it in a way that I think the Leadership Council did for me, honestly. Because I've gotten the no of, well, not no, but yeah, whatever.
Scram, would you? Like, yeah.
Get out the door. By the way, we're going to kick it behind you. but that kind of no, that's a challenge that I do give to Leadership Council members. Continue to operate in that way, that you encourage the people who want to step in to Leadership Council. Because to me, that was one of the most positive experiences that I've ever had, when somebody told me no in my career. So good stuff, though.
Yeah. And Sharon's actually echoing that, saying that she loves that the nominating committee offers feedback on what to work on.
Yeah.
It is not like a job interview where they send you a Dear John letter and they don't tell you why, right? Like the why is very helpful, especially if it means that, you could eventually end up succeeding in the future if you work on some stuff, and she's also saying that it's important for us to identify the future of our association, which is completely true. Which is also another pointer here. If you are new within the society, seek out someone who is on the Leadership Council and pick their brain. What can I do? The other thing that you can do is check out the episode where I stricken everyone with just my solo presence, talking about pathways that you can get to, the Leadership Council or even the Executive Committee within the society. There's a couple of main pathways, but those aren't also set in stone either. There's other ways that you can get to the Leadership Council and kind of the upper level of the servant leadership that's happening in the society. So definitely check out that video and seek out someone on the Leadership Council and pick their brain. What can I do? Where can I go? Where can I fill in? What's going to be high value that I can do for the society that will then, help me progress. And Sharon is offering, quick, everyone email Sharon. Sharon said she's happy to speak with anyone about their future in the industry and the association. So again, good egg all the way around. So with that, we will be back next week. We are working on a guest for next week, as well as a couple more topics and things like that we can bring to the fore. So definitely check us out. Every Wednesday, 5:30, How to CPCU, and that's it. Anything else?
I think it's been a great show. Appreciate it,
good.
Matt. Yeah.
Yeah. We will see you next week. And look, whatever you do in the society, we are also here too. So you can reach out to us and we'll help you out.
Yeah.
So, and as usual, we will see you next week.